Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be talking about a technique that I have been relying on heavy this year as the fishing has been extra tough. I'm going to be talking about the drop shot. I'm going to talk about a bunch of different hacks that I use on the drop shot all year round to try and get me some extra bites, especially if everybody else is even throwing the drop shot. You can use some of these tips to get more bites to make yours look a little bit different than theirs. And if you're new to my channel, head down below and hit the subscribe button for me. I put out new fishing videos every Monday and Thursday, from tip videos like this to fishing videos out on the water and tournament footage, so if you don't want to miss any of that, hit that button down below. Okay, so we're going to start today's video talking about some very minor modifications that you can do to help you catch more fish, and then we're going to work all the way to some crazy stuff that you can do on a drop shot that not a lot of people do out there and that I've been catching some fish on lately. The first thing, everybody knows typical drop shot. You're going to rig it up with a standard nose hook similar to this. This is a Gamakatsu split shot drop shot hook, and then you're going to put a drop shot weight down below it. Very simple rig, not very complicated to tie up or to do. If you're interested in seeing some of that, I will be putting an instructional video all about the drop shot out later. But for right now, we're just talking about some tricks and tips about it. The first tip that I have for you, and what I do a lot of times, if you're fishing around grass, this is when it works really well. It can be light grass, all the way, like light submerged sparse grass, all the way up to some fairly thick grass, depending on how you rig it up. And that's going to be, I change my hook. So this is a RoboWorm rebarb hook. You can see it has a little keeper there. This is a very light wire hook. I can still throw this one on a spinning rod, but they make one that's a medium wire that you can put on a bait caster as well. And this allows you to Texas rig your worm on a drop shot. So while everyone else is flipping Texas rigs somewhere, you can flip a drop shot and it gives your bait a different presentation, sitting up off the bottom, more natural action, stuff like that, and will allow you to get more bites if you just change your hook up to that while keeping it totally weedless. That's the number one trick that I do with my drop shot. I fish this more times than not. The one downside to this is you will lose some fish if you don't get a good enough hook set in them, especially because you're usually fishing this on a spinning rod and it's Texas rigged. But unless I can get the open hook through it, I'll go to this hook, just because I'll get me one or two more bites instead of having to reel this hook in covered in grass every couple casts because you're fishing it around grass. The next thing I'll do is actually change my weight size. And another thing about your weight, everyone always wants to use the little cannonball weights or teardrop weights, and they work pretty well in rock. But if you're going to fish in grass, like we just talked about with that hook, I go to these little stick weights, pencil drop shot weights. They work awesome in the grass. They come through really well. And then the next thing you want to do is, depending on where you're fishing, I carry weight sizes from a 1/8 all the way up to a 1/2 ounce right there. That's a size comparison between the two. I carry every size in between. There are times when just the smallest amount of weight change can make a difference. The more natural you can get that bait to go through the cover, the better. So if you're casting your drop shot out there, especially around grass, and you're fishing it, and it's getting stuck in the grass because the weight's going too far down in and getting stuck, you need to go lighter. The lightest weight you can get away with. I've seen times when I've thrown a 3/16 ounce drop shot weight and caught some fish, and then switched to a 1/8 ounce drop shot weight and caught plenty more around the area just because it was a lighter weight. And it's only by 1/8 of an ounce from a 1/8 to a 3/16. But that 1/8 of an ounce is enough to keep it out of the grass and fish more naturally through it than getting buried down in it and having to rip it free and making it look unnatural. Everyone's going to throw a typical drop shot bait like this guy right here, the Strike King Dream Shot. Everybody throws that stuff. Dream Shot, shad shaped worm, the Max Scent flatworm, all that kind of stuff. Everybody's going to throw a 4-inch worm on a drop shot. RoboWorm's another good one, and you just drag it around. That's the typical drop shot rig. What I do is I'll change some baits up, sizes, shapes, to do different things. If you're fishing around perch in a lake, like I'll go to this right here, Zoom Trick Worm. That's a 6.5 inch bait. Has this perch looking profile. That little chartreuse tail works pretty good. This is called motor oil chartreuse. But I'll go to a trick worm if I'm trying to get some bigger bites at a 6.5 inch worm. I'll go to a Senko. I'll go to any type of bigger worm like that. Something different than the standard drop shot worm. And that's actually, I'll Texas rig this one and throw it in the grass. And you can catch a lot of big fish throwing a bigger worm in the grass on a drop shot. Another bait that works really, really well on the drop shot is actually the Senko. This allows you to fish a Senko in depths of water deeper than like 5 feet, where you can typically get a Senko weightless. You can put this on a weight, and another thing you can even do is wacky rig your Senko on your drop shot. Get like a 2-foot leader and throw it out there, and when you throw it out there, the weight will drag it right down to the bottom, and then that last 2 feet it'll fall like a standard wacky rig. Then you can lift it back up and it'll wacky rig up off the bottom, and it'll fall like a standard wacky rig again. So that's a way you can fish a wacky rig in as deep of water as you want. You can fish it down to 30 foot deep on a drop shot. Just wacky rig it like you would up shallow and have a long leader on your drop shot. So the next thing that you can do to your drop shot is when your fish are feeding around bait fish or shad, you want to go to a fluke. You would nose hook it just like any other drop shot bait, and you can fish it around down there deep. This is a full-size 5-inch fluke, but you can get the juniors or even the regular. They're called the fluke. They're even smaller than that. They almost look like a power bait minnow. Any type of stuff like that. Get a minnow-shaped bait, put it on your drop shot, and you can throw it out there, and you can imitate bait fish rather than what a Senko or a standard drop shot bait imitates. Is more like a bluegill or perch or small minnows like swimming around down there. You can imitate shad or other types of bait fish by going to a fluke. And the last trick that I like to do to my drop shot, I actually did it in one of my last videos of my Leave It on the Scales series in the Potomac River. I was fishing what they call a power shot. What I'll do is I'll take that RoboWorm medium wire rebarb hook, put it on 15-pound test on a bait caster with like a 1/4 ounce weight, and I will put a Texas rigged creature bait on it, like a brush hog or something like that. It'll give your drop shot an entirely different action from what everybody else is doing, and while everyone else is pitching to grass clumps and stuff like that, or even hard cover like rocks and wood and logs, with a standard Texas rigged creature bait, yours will be suspended up in the water column, working its way around. It just gives it a different action. It's a very specific technique. You can put a beaver bait on there. You can put pretty much anything you want. You can put a worm on there too, one of the trick worms, and you can flip it around with 15-pound test on some heavier cover and do something different than what everybody else is throwing a Texas rig or a jig or something like that. Sometimes it'll get you more bites than that Texas rig or jig will, because those fish aren't seeing that. The creature bait is an odd one to put on the drop shot, but I promise you it will work if you try it. It just gives it a different look. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video talking all about drop shot tips and hacks to do to catch more fish while you're out there. I promise if you give some of these a try out there, you might be surprised with some of the results. Give them a try on your local lake, see if you catch some fish, and if you enjoyed the tips, leave a like down below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more of my fishing tips or videos. Thanks for watching.